Vienna, 1847. A young woman is on her knees in a hospital corridor, sobbing, begging the staff not to take her through the door on the left. She is in labor, and she would rather give birth outside, on the cobblestones in the cold, than pass through that door. Here's the thing. She was right to beg, because this hospital had 2 maternity wards. Same building, same city, same patients. In Ward 2, about 1 mother in 50 died. In Ward 1, 1 in 8. 5 times the death rate behind one door and not the other. The women knew it. The whole city knew it. And the doctors who ran the deadly ward had no idea why. This is not the history of soap. This is the story of the man who solved that mystery and was destroyed for it. I'm Aidan Thomas, and this is Hidden History. His name was Ignaz Semmelweis, a Hungarian doctor working at the Vienna General Hospital, and unlike his colleagues, he couldn't look away from the numbers. He started eliminating suspects like a detective. Overcrowding? No, Ward 2 was actually more crowded, and fewer women died there. The building? Same building. The climate? Same air. He even investigated whether the priest walking through Ward 1, ringing a bell for the dying, was frightening women to death. He rerouted the priest. Nothing changed. Then came the break in the case, and it cost a man his life. In 1847, Semmelweis's friend and colleague Jakob Kolecka was performing an autopsy when a student's scalpel slipped and nicked his finger. A tiny cut. Days later, Kolecka was dead. And when Semmelweis read the autopsy report, his blood ran cold. The disease that killed his friend was identical to the fever killing the mothers in Ward 1. And suddenly, the difference between the 2 wards was obvious. Ward 2 was staffed by midwives. Ward 1 was staffed by doctors and medical students, men who spent their mornings dissecting corpses and their afternoons delivering babies. Same hands, no washing in between. The doctors weren't fighting the killer, the doctors were carrying it. And here's what makes this story hurt. The solution wasn't waiting to be invented. It was 4,600 years old. Around 2,800 BC, the Babylonians pressed a recipe into a clay cylinder. Fats, boiled with ashes. Soap. The Romans built an entire bathing culture around it. Syrian soap makers in Aleppo were producing luxury olive oil soap so fine that crusaders built trade routes just to import it. Humanity had the weapon the entire time. In fact, in Semmelweis's own century, England was still taxing soap as a luxury item. Clean hands were, quite literally, a privilege of the rich. All Semmelweis had to do was convince doctors to use it. That turned out to be the hardest part of the entire story. May 1847. Semmelweis places a basin of chlorinated lime solution at the entrance of Ward 1 and gives an order that sounds absurd for its time. No doctor touches a patient without washing his hands first. The results were almost unbelievable. The death rate collapsed from over 13% to barely 1%. Some months, Ward 1 recorded 0 deaths. 0. For the first time in the hospital's history. With a wash basin and a rule, Semmelweis had just made one of the most important medical discoveries of all time. If stories like this are your thing, subscribe. Every week we open another case file like this one. Because what happened next is the reason this story is still worth telling. you would expect celebration. Medals, adoption in every hospital in Europe. What happened was the opposite. Think about what Semmelweis was actually saying to the medical elite of Europe. You, the gentlemen, the professors, the healers, have been killing your own patients for years, with your own hands. They didn't hear a discovery. They heard an accusation. The prevailing theory said disease came from miasma, bad air. Invisible particles on a gentleman's hands? Offensive. Absurd. His findings were dismissed. His contract in Vienna was quietly not renewed. He was pushed out of the very hospital where his rule was saving lives, and in some wards the washing stopped and the DIing resumed. Semmelweis didn't take it gracefully. He grew obsessive, then furious. He wrote open letters to Europe's leading obstetricians and called them what he believed they were: irresponsible murderers. His behavior became erratic. Friends distanced themselves. Colleagues whispered that the Hungarian had lost his mind. And in 1865, some of them decided to act on it. He was told it was a professional visit, a tour of a new medical institution in Vienna. It wasn't. It was an asylum. When Semmelweis realized what was happening, he fought. The guards beat him, restrained him, locked him in a dark cell. 14 days later, he was dead, 47 years old. And here is the cruelest irony in the history of medicine. He died of an infected wound. The exact kind of infection he had spent his entire life teaching doctors how to prevent, with nothing more than clean hands. It took 2 more decades. Louis Pasteur put germs under a microscope. Joseph Lister carried antiseptics into the operating room. Everything Semmelweis had proven with a wash basin was now confirmed by science, and this time the world listened. Today, he is called the father of hand hygiene. There are statues of him. A university in Budapest carries his name. And in 2020, when a pandemic shut down the planet, the single most repeated piece of medical advice on Earth was the sentence he was destroyed for: wash your hands. Because soap really is a weapon. Each molecule has 2 ends. One grabs water, the other grabs fat. When you wash your hands, those molecules wedge into a virus's fatty shell and physically tear it apart. A 4,600-year-old Babylonian recipe ripping a 21st century virus to pieces. So tonight, when you wash your hands, look at that bar of soap for a second. It's not just a product. It's a monument, not to an invention, but to a warning. Being right is not enough. Semmelweis didn't lose because his evidence was weak. He lost because the men he needed to convince would have had to admit they'd been killing their own patients. Next week's case file. An object so valuable that one of the most powerful republics on Earth killed to keep it secret. Not a weapon, not gold. Something hanging on your wall right now. I'm Aidan Thomas. This is Hidden History. Take a look around. History is everywhere.